This is one of the worst investments I've seen in downtown Toronto. There are probably more buildings that I can analyze that are comparable to this, but this one particularly stood out to me because I remember clients asking me about this and I told them not to do it. I remember speaking to someone on the phone telling me that they're planning to buy here and I told them that they were crazy and I broke down the numbers for them. But surprise, surprise, they didn't listen to me and ended up buying 2 units. You'll be surprised at how many times I've told people not to buy and they don't listen to me. What do I know? I've just been doing real estate full time at a high level for over 2 decades, and I've personally bought and sold over 40 times. If you've been keeping up with my recent videos, we just created the most important tool for you to analyze properties. So let's get straight into and analyze this building since it recently closed and we now have the actual real numbers we can use. I'll show you how to put this tool into use. If you have no idea what I'm talking about and haven't watched my recent Investor 101 video, you can watch it here. If you're watching this and you own in this building as an investor, I feel terrible for you and I wish you were never put into this situation. However, this can be a learning experience for everyone watching this, so I'm not trying to poke fun at you or take this situation lightly, so don't take anything I say personally. You do have my sincere sympathy. Now let's get into this story. This project was launched in mid-February 2020, and if you remember, this was right before COVID and the market was hot. Inventory was low, bidding wars were prevalent, and it was like an all-out real estate frenzy. This project launched with the following prices, which I organized into this spreadsheet here. It ranged from $1,300 to $1,550 per square foot. This was crazy to me as when I broke down my numbers, it didn't make sense to me any sense whatsoever. Now that the building is closed and completed, I can see that there are 2 properties that are on the market for sale. We'll take these two examples because one is a 1-bedroom and the other is a 2-bedroom. I researched and collected all the data for you here and inputted them into our model. In both examples, we'll look at it from a 2020 perspective and then look at the actual 2024 numbers today to see if it was a good investment or not. I'm going to use the same spreadsheet that we used in my previous video so you can follow along. I'm going to go quickly with no explanations as I just want to input the data and then figure out what my 2 questions are, which are what is my cash flow and what is my ROI. We will assume you're looking at this from a perspective of an investor, so no emotions, just numbers. Now that we have our model, I can show you how quickly we can figure this out. First thing we're going to look at is a 1-bedroom, 479 square foot from February 2020. This unit that's currently on the market was purchased for $859,490. They paid $125,000 for the parking spot, so this was a really bad decision on their part to buy a parking spot for a 479 square foot unit in downtown at this ridiculous price of $125,000. So I can see already that this is really going to hurt real bad. There were no incentives, so I'm going to zero all of these out. The development charges were $11,000, and I put a development contingency of $2,000. The property is in Toronto, and we're not a first-time buyer. And yes, we're eligible for the HST, and we'll use the same minor acquisition costs from the previous video. I inputted the deposit schedule here from the developer's price list. I estimated 3.5% for the interim occupancy rate, which is optimistic. Condo fees were 67 cents a square foot by the developer. They didn't give me the cost for parking and locker, so I just guessed $70 per month for the parking and $20 per month for the locker. My property tax, we just used the 1% from our previous video. But all of this was pointless because there is 0 months of occupancy. This is a developer that always goes into final closing and has no interim occupancy, so we put 0 here. The rental income I took from my table for February 2020, it was $2,125 for the median price, so I added $200 for the parking, and we ended up with $2,325, so we're going to take 4 years to close. Projected rent $2,566. For the mortgage interest rate, I did it for 3%, did a 30-year AM with a 12-month payments per year, 5-year term. The expenses, the only thing I changed here was a property tax rate. This was a property tax rate for 2020. I kept insurance at $40 and $5 for the utilities. Inflation was at 2%. And then I changed the today's price. So I basically estimated today's price to be $691,500. I just took the median price from my table here, at the time for February 2020, which was $631,500, and then I added $60,000 for the parking, which is a more realistic price for parking. I've never seen parking sell for the developer's price on resale. It typically goes for a lot less because we aren't New York or Hong Kong yet. I left the real estate appreciation rate at 2%, and I left the real estate fees at 5% for the commissions. So now let's take a look at the cash flows. So you're going to be negative $1,400 a month to start off, and then you'll be negative cash flow for the next 24 years, as you can see here. And if you add up all of this negative cash flow, it actually ends up coming up to another $230,000 that you're gonna have to invest on top of your $214,000 that you've initially invested. So a total of $444,000, almost $445,000 you're gonna have to put into this property. Now let's take a look at the ROI. We've looking at negative cash flow for 3 years. And then if you actually wanted to sell the property, you won't make your money back until year 9. And you got to add 4 more years for the construction. So it's going to take you 13 years to make your money back on this property. Keep in mind, we're being optimistic here with our numbers, and still it's this bad back in 2020 with a 3% interest rate. Now let's look at this in 2024, the real numbers. They're trying to sell this right now for almost $900,000. But now I'm not very hopeful for them. To update this to today's numbers, I just took the exact same numbers and changed the following. Updated the rental income to today's numbers. I saw the exact same unit renting for $2,250 and $2,300 here. So let's give them the extra $50 plus $200 for the parking. So that's $2,500 per month. I changed the number of years to 0 as we want today's numbers, not the future. And I also changed the mortgage rate to 6%. And I also updated the property tax to 2023's numbers and changed today's price to $650,000, which still puts the property at $1,357 per square foot. So the cash flow works out to minus over $2,800 per month. You're going to be in negative cash flow for over 30 years. So the amount of money you're going to be paying over 30 years on top of your $214,000 investment is almost $758,000. And when you add those two numbers together, you get almost $1 million of cash that you're going to have to inject into this property. Now, when you look at the ROI is going to be negative for 19 years, and you won't make your money back until year 20, which is 24 years since you got to add the amount of time that it takes for construction. So you're not going to see your money for at least 24 years. That's pretty bleak and terrible news for this person who bought this property. But if this person didn't buy parking, would it make things any better? Let's take a look. So to do this, you just have to subtract the $125,000 from the price for the parking. And then we go to the condo fees. And then we take out the parking fee per month. And then we're going to reduce the rent by $200. And then we're going to reduce today's price by $60,000 because we put that into the parking spot. Now let's take a look at the cash flow. Now the cash flow is still negative, about $1,000. You're going to be paying out of pocket on cash flow until year 22. And if you add up all the negative numbers, you're going to have to invest another $146,000 after you invest $185,000 for a total of $330,000. Now let's take a look at the ROI. So you're going to be negative in the first year, but you're really not making anything significant over 4% until year 10. And then it's going to take you up to year 8. So that's 12 years to get your money back out of the property. Now let's take a look at the summary. I organize all the information onto this table here, and wow, it's just an absolute bloodbath. We can clearly see from our model that this was a terrible investment to start with on day 1, even with the lower rates. And if you actually look at what happened in reality, it's even worse. It's like double the worst because of the interest rates. Also, because the prices were so high and the rents were not even anywhere close to where it needed to be to make any money, this person that owns this property got screwed by buying the additional parking spot as well. I don't know. Let's see what happens, but I don't think they can ever sell this property without taking a huge loss. Now let's see if the two bedrooms fare any better. So the price was 984,490 for this. The size was 741 square feet. The development charge was a little bit higher for 13,000. We can ignore the interim occupancy because that was zero. So the rental income I used was 2950, and I got that from the same table that I took for the one bedroom here. We're going to be using the same interest rate for the mortgage, and we're going to put today's value as 906,250 as I got from my table here for the median sale price for a two bedroom back in 2020 of February. Now let's take a look at the cash flow. You're going to be minus $1,300 per month, and you're going to be paying into this property till year 20, and that total amount is equal to $171,000 after you've invested $245,000. So you're looking at a total of $417,000 that you're going to be paying into this property over the next 20 years. So when you take a look at the ROI, you're actually making a positive cash flow from the year one, but you're actually not making anything meaningful until about year 7, which is about 4%. It's nothing to write home about. And then if you wanted to sell the property, you wouldn't be able to sell into year 5 to get your money out. So you're holding this property for at least 9 years. So now let's take a look at today's numbers at 2024, as this one is on the market right now for $1,050,000. So let's just get straight into the numbers. You're looking at a minus $2,600 cash flow per month, and you're going to be negative cash flow on this property for over 30 years, as you can see here. And then if you add this all up together, that's going to be an extra $536,000 that you have to put into the property on top of the $245,000 that you've invested. So you're going to be feeding $782,000 of total money into this property over the next 30 years. If you look at the ROI, your negative ROI until year 14. So you're not making no money until year 14. And then if you wanted to sell the property, you wouldn't be able to sell it until year 12. That's when you actually start making a positive ROI on your investment. And then you're going to have to add 4 years on top of that. So you're holding this property for 16 years. So your money is going to be tied up for 16 years. Now let's take a look at our summary. You can clearly see by the numbers in the summary that no investor should have ever invested in this building, as this was way overpriced. The only ones who made money off this building were the developers and the agents that sold it. Every single investor that bought here will lose a lot of money on this property based on our model. They'll need to hold for at least 10 years plus and hope that the real estate market goes back to the crazy appreciation we saw in the past if they have any hope of recovery. But this is all speculation, and smart investors never invest on speculation. This is how the real estate game works sometimes. You don't make money all the time. Sometimes you lose big if you don't know how to play the game. Therefore, I'll crown this as one of the worst investments that I've seen in all of downtown Toronto. There are similar buildings like this, and if you'd like me to do an analysis on something, put them into the comments below, and I'll break them down for you in the future. If you have done your numbers, you would have seen the warning signs flashing red the entire time. I even flashed it for a few people and they still ended up buying. You'll hear me say it over and over again, but that's the problem with people. They're emotional buyers and not true investors. Even with experienced experts telling them not to buy, some people are just going to buy no matter what and end up in financial trouble. Only when they experience trouble will they realize they've been playing a losing game all along. Now that you know this, I hope you're not going to be participating in any of this foolishness. The only way to get out of ignorance is to gain knowledge. And I'm here to show you what I've learned from my own foolish mistakes. By the way, to all my subscribers who have received my free gift, I'll be providing you with updates as we progress along each video. You'll receive the updates in your inbox directly. If you don't know what I'm talking about and don't want to play this real estate game blindly and want to learn how to actually do these numbers yourself, you can learn from this video here. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.